everybody, I'm Hara Gavriliadi. I'm a senior customer experience and data strategist in AWS. And here with me today, I have Fabrice Khullar from Selfridges, Director of Design and Product Development, and Dwayne Browne from AWS, Principal Customer Experience and Data Strategist. We are here to talk about the customer experience landscape in retail and how cloud technologies, and in particular data and AI/ML, shaping that landscape. Fabrice, Dwayne, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to Amazon Studios. Fabrice, I would like to start with you, and if you could please tell us a little bit about your role at Selfridges.
Yeah, sure. Hi. Thanks for having me. So I look after everything at Selfridges that is product management, UX, and design. We work very closely with tech teams to kind of develop our customer experience. We do a lot of things ourselves with engineering teams, just to kind of drive that customer experience.
And Dwayne, could you please share about your role at AWS?
Sure. So Dwayne, I lead our CX practice here at AWS, data strategy, and I help customers to innovate and also deliver change, mainly in the areas of marketing automation, digital experience, and so on. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Great. So I would like to talk about the relationship between consumers, customers, and the retailers. Obviously, that relationship has been going through big transformation the last years. I will say it's undergoing a profound shift due to several factors. Advancements in technology, of course, generative AI, but social media, like the adoption of mobile phones, the change of consumer behaviors. There is more awareness of social and environmental issues, the impact of global events. COVID-19 pandemic wasn't too long ago, and also the widespread adoption of digital technologies and e-commerce. So customers are looking for more personalized, seamless experience with the retailers, no matter where they are in their journey, and no matter what channel they are using, right? So omni-channel, I will say it becomes a non-negotiable opportunity. Fabrice, what are your thoughts of how cloud technology and data and AI/ML is reshaping the experience of customers when they interact both with digital and physical channels?
Yeah, sure. I think there's probably a couple of things to think about, right? So I think firstly, I feel that it's not just about technology disrupting retail or other organizations. I think the consumer is actually disrupting it because they have access to this technology, and there's an expectation now that, you know, all these channels are connected, all the things you can do with your phone, right, are going to be relevant regardless of how you choose to interact with the brand. And I think that's been going on for quite some time, and it's taken, I think, some retail organizations a while to get used to the fact that, you know, for example, in its most basic form, I guess, we know that customers are browsing our websites or searching or doing things before they even get to our stores, right? So it's really important to sort of create those connections. I think on the business side, what technology and new technologies are enabling is it's just making it easier to stitch those things together for us. So being able to access large data sets from different channels, being able to spin up things very quickly and environments to be able to test these things in the cloud, etc. Those are obviously benefits to organizations that I think otherwise might have found it harder to be playing around with this sort of tech to enable different experiences for our customers.
Yeah, I agree with Fabrice. I think consumer behavior is really driving the change, and cloud is an enabler. If you rewind maybe 10, 12 years ago, where you had marketing departments really trailblazing with, you know, the first introduction of personalized experiences and product suggestions and everything, those are based on, you know, SaaS solutions that were based in the cloud, right? And I think what has happened now is like the broader organizations and other departments have adopted the cloud, that wealth has been shared more broadly. I think I really like the way you framed it, in that it's really made the bigger smaller. It's broken down the complexity into smaller bits. So now you can do things like spin up a small service that integrate different systems so you can get real-time inventory. So now you can have a digital kiosk in the store and actually get the item in the store while you're in the store, right? That wouldn't have been easy before, if you see my point, right? Or you can spin up services based on demand. So you can now do things like have a time limited offer and a mobile app on a social media platform, and then actually get the order delivered to you, or you can go pick it up. So the relationship and the interconnectivity between the different channels is much easier, and I think the cloud is an enabler for that.
Great, thank you. And you talk about excuse me, a few things. So you talk about customer experience that may encompass more than customer acquisition, more than customer engagement. It's also about customer service. You talk about inventory, right? Inventory management, maybe order fulfillment and returns. So I would like to start with customer engagement. And Fabrice, could you just share your thoughts, discuss again the role of data and AI, ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning in reshaping the customer engagement?
So yeah, I think the use of certainly data and then how we kind of access those pools of information that we have on our customers, how they choose to, whether it's navigate our stores or browse our websites or the things they purchase. I think all of that helps us create much more relevant experiences and relevant sort of ways to navigate our stores. And what that does effectively is starts to play into how we ensure that customers are engaging with us more regularly, or just becoming advocates of our brand and sort of almost moving to being fans of our brand, which I think is becoming incredibly important. And some of that, as well, I think for us has enabled us to do things like build a membership program, which allows us to, understand even better how our customers are engaging with us, what they care about, which in turn then allows us to kind of tailor the experience to drive that engagement. So it becomes this kind of, cycle that it allows us to sort of create.
So I really like Fabrice's point, the way you framed it. I think there's something to be said about how brands, retailers, even across different sectors, they've got the opportunity now to use AI and ML further upstream to get a better understanding of the way customers use or engage with brands and purchasing behaviors and what they're saying, what they're actually doing, and then feed that into developing better propositions that have a positive impact on engagement, right? So the cycle, to your point, is refined, as a result of embedding AI and ML into the mix.
I see. So what you're telling me is how you can create a customer base so devoted to your brand, right, that they are willing to do repeated business with that brand, right? And with better understanding, using data, like creating better insights, understanding more of the behaviors and framing better propositions, better messaging, you create this personalized experience that brands, retailers can use to drive up loyalty and the top line. I think, Fabrice, you talk about the membership program that you have. So I would like to double click on this one. And I think it's called Selfridges Unlocked. Could you share some insights on the strategies for enhancing customer loyalty?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, the other thing I guess we've talked about a little bit so far is we talk about sort of data, AI, ML. I think they are slightly different things. And having access to data and doing clever things with that data, I think ML and AI are moving us towards the kinds of things we do with it to get to an outcome. But ultimately, we've been collecting this data on our customers for years, understanding through our insights teams, et cetera, how they're transacting, the seasonality sometimes in some cases, how international might be different to domestic, all those different data points and insights that have allowed us to realize that really to drive that engagement, we wanted to create a cohort of customers that we would just kind of have a better understanding of, and so that we could drive that loyalty, drive the engagement by creating specific tailored experiences for them. So we launched Selfridges Unlocked last year. We're sort of about to, obviously it's an ongoing program, and we will be launching more features and more benefits over the next year. But really the idea was to start to create this feeling of, you belong to, you're a member of Selfridges, and through that you are unlocking different benefits, different experiences, things that we can do to reward you for engaging with us. And in turn, as long as the data that we're collecting is relevant, and we spend a lot of time making sure that we're getting the right data sets from our customers, we can use that data to then in turn do better things for you, and have you really be part of this community that we're creating through Selfridges Unlocked.
You made me think about something, So you remember back in the day when you had your panels and your focus groups, and so they very much determine the products that you would build, the campaigns that you would build, the trends that you would double down in, and focus on. But it was largely based on what customers said they would do, and the reality was different, right? I think now you've got an opportunity to take a subset of users, your actual customers from that panel, run an ethnographic study, observe them out in the world in their own environment, see them, engaging with the brand and the things that they do to the left and right of that, right? And you pick up missed opportunities, right? And you determine like underserved audiences of people that you aren't actually providing to that well, and then merge that to the data that you just talked about, right? So you've got quantitative data, you've got purchasing trends, you've got ways that they engage with you, and you've got a nice, richer picture of of this small group. The magic is though, you can now take that and now project that outward to a broader base. So now like your product team, merchandisers, they've got a much better, a bigger space that they can play with and they can experiment with to test out propositions, and they could get a much better understanding of the customers that haven't been in the surveys and they aren't in the focus groups. So you made the 20 people here, the 20,000 that you've got as customers, right? You got a much better understanding more broadly.
Yeah, and I think you're also reducing the risk of getting it wrong. Like in the old way, if we call it that, it wasn't that long ago, right? But there's always that risk of getting it wrong because through a focus group, through a survey, you're asking the questions. Customers are going to tell you maybe what they want to tell you, but it doesn't necessarily tell you how they're really going to behave. Sure. And it's the old Ford example. If Ford had asked people what they wanted, he'd have built a horse, right? It's kind of like that. I think data allows us to move away from what's being said or what's being intended and actually what's really happening. Yes. And it's not to say you don't still do those things to get a sense or to understand if your ideas have any value, but I think it's now you can augment that with real data, real transactional or behavioral data that allows you to. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's go to the hard stuff now because we talk about customer engagement, we talk about customer loyalty, but in order to do these things, we need first to acquire and retain customers, right? So I would like to talk about customer acquisition and retention, and I think the retail environment at the moment is challenging from almost every perspective. So there is disruption from online players. There is price pressure from the discounters. There are so many choices for shoppers. And I think also on top of this, there is price transparency for the shoppers, right? And the traditional approaches of, pricing and promotions is less effective now. It's not working because it's very easy for the competitors to imitate this, right? So, Dwayne, what are some of the main challenges that retailers face in acquiring new customers, but also retaining the existing ones? If you could please share some of solutions, some suggestions of how we can overcome these challenges.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but I feel it's never been harder for brands to break through. I think there's so many things you can see in a 24-hour day now. It's like, there's just a plethora of things and it's fully saturated. So it's hard. There's no reason, that's the reason why acquisition costs are so high across different sectors. I mean, some sectors are easier than others, but in general, the trend is upward, right? I feel like there's a elephant in the room now for brands in general, so not just retailers, as to do you develop your base? So do you nurture your base to build your base, right? And so let's double click into that. So Fabrice made a point earlier around using insights to develop more tailored propositions that creates more love products, so people engage with you more, right? So then that allows you then to create a community. That's an interesting proposition, right? But then once you do that, those customers they're gonna speak on your behalf, right? They're gonna be advocates for your brand, right? The nice little byproduct of that though is that you can use their profiles to create lookalikes to attract more people like them, right? So you got that nice twofold benefit, you know. And you're right, and you mentioned the acquisition cost earlier. I think the last stat I saw was something like 12 or 15% uplift year on year.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. I mean, I think ultimately retention is probably where increasingly brands need to focus, because there is so much choice out there, and I think it's sort of moving away from traditional thinking on this, where actually, when we talk about customer experience, it's a pretty broad topic. To me, ultimately, customer experience is about how a customer ends up feeling, how you make them feel. So, there's different points in that journey for sure, but how they will remember you is probably, a combination of all those things and how they had that journey. And that will then determine whether they decide to come back to you or not. And I think that's where retailers need to focus. And I think taking a leaf out of maybe adjacent industries, like if you think about things that are happening in the fitness space or in music, where it's about creating fans and communities, to your point, and sort of thinking of our customers in those ways. Like, how do you create these very engaged, very loyal fans that will value the experience overall with you versus just acquiring a product, And again, also recognizing that there'll be different times and different use cases and different journeys for those customers. Sometimes you will be driven by price. You might be buying something that's more of a commodity that you will go from a search into finding the best price for it. Sometimes you will want to, get the full experience because it's, I don't know, you might be sending someone a gift and you want that to be pretty special. So you're going to go to the brand that you trust to do that. So I think, again, it's becoming increasingly important to think about our customers as fans that we will retain and will keep engaging with us.
You just made me think about something, I saw this article the other day around how Gen Z consumers have broken the funnel, right? And I think it goes inspiration into exploration, into community, into loyalty. That's different, right? So it made me think, like, the challenge for brands, well, it'd be interesting to see how that plays out as that cohort grows older, right? But I still think it's an interesting challenge for brands in that, well, it means that, you probably need to create more engaging stories further up, right? And there's acquisition costs and implications and costs on that front. But there's probably a totally different way of working to create a community, right? More broadly, or for different product groups that you've got. So I think it's an interesting, more dynamic space.
So what you're highlighting is that differentiation can be still achievable through personalized approaches, because retailers, brands, organizations can craft unique experiences that are relevant to the customers, that they are relevant to their needs, to their preferences, and this way retailers make the customer part of the dialogue. So they create these personalized products, offers that are uniquely relevant to them. So, Fabrice, how organizations can leverage technology, data, and AI/ML to create more personalized and seamless experiences across various platforms?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly important, and I guess some of this isn't new. I think we're just getting better at it because we're getting better data, and then obviously through technology we're finding easier ways to leverage that data to do that. And I suppose we ran a trial recently, actually working with AWS, using kind of data that we had on our logged in customers to tailor the experience that they got on our app. So we took a single carousel, which used to be like a static carousel where we were positioning certain products, certain brands. We turned that around to be relevant to that customer. So in that journey, you're going to see either brands or adjacent brands or things that are relevant to either things you've browsed or things you've bought before. And it was incredible to see how we ran this test for a couple of months. We saw like 130% increase in click-through on those carousels. And again, I think that's because we've done a lot, I think, as retailers and other industries in terms of on the acquisition side, making sure that messaging is very relevant, for example, and personalization kind of on that side of the fence. But I think it's also customers are expecting that level of, personalization and for things to be relevant to kind of carry through the entire experience. So when they then land on your app or website or whatever, you're still kind of engaging in that dialogue, to your point. And then, when they come into store, again, I think there'd be an expectation that the things they're being talked to about maybe by a member of the team that might be using a clienteling app or something, again, that you've persisted that personalization and that understanding of the customer. And ultimately, it's about creating that two-way conversation. We talk a lot about growing customer relationships because I think that's what it's about. It's about creating those relationships, and that's what personalization allows you to do.
You just triggered a memory, Fabrice. Remember the days when a large percentage of like online transactions were like anonymous, and like brands were fine with that. And I think slowly you have to create value propositions to encourage people to sign on and that kind of thing. I think to see where we're at now, on the value that creates, both for brands but also for consumers. I think the important thing for businesses to remember though, is that it's more important for you to go beyond the data marts and the AML environments. Okay, I think it's more important for you to extend those into services that allow you to create consistency across channels, right? And that way you can move away from, think about strategy over here, and then each department develops their own capability asynchronously, right? Because you're bound to get disparities in in the way you deliver it when you do it that way. I really like what your team is doing, not just because I'm next to you, right? I think this whole idea of like you got a cross-functional team that is aligned to journeys. I think that's a really powerful way to do it, right? But that's nothing to do with technology. If you really think about it, you just organize yourself in a different way. You've changed your operating model, right? And then the services support that. So if you're in the contact center, or if you're in web, you're developing an app or whatever, you've got consistency in data, you're seeing the same things, you've got the same propensity scores, right?
I see. Fabrice, you talk about, the trials, what experiments that you are doing. And I would like to double click on this one because experimentation and innovation actually can create a competitive advantage to create that enhanced customer experiences, right? And as well, experimentation and innovation are ingrained in our AWS approach, centered on working backwards, and we use the working backwards mechanisms blended with service design, what you mentioned, Dwayne, in our customer experience innovation workshops. And the idea there is we start from the customer problems and we focus on the customer needs rather than organizational goals. And we start small, but thinking what we can create, that first invention that we can create using data, using technologies, get alignment from people, like the different teams. And we build upon it, we iterate, we test, we learn, and we fail fast as well, which is very important. We call this flywheel, and the idea is to keep spinning that flywheels. So Fabrice, what is that process for you, and how important is that culture of experimentation and innovation in creating that competitive advantage?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things, I guess, to think about there. I mean, firstly, absolutely agree with kind of everything you've said, and we've done some work with you guys, so aware of some of the frameworks and the things that you use within kind of your organizations. Some of that's hugely inspirational, and we've definitely taken some of that back from the workshops we've had to apply in our own business. I think overarchingly, what I've seen in different retailers is there's a real need to experiment and innovate. I absolutely agree. I think a lot of retailers struggle with that because retail can be a bit short term in terms of, you're always focused on kind of the current trading period, the next couple of months, the next quarter, and you're not always allowing yourself to invest and think further out. But increasingly, that's becoming hugely important because I think, to your point, to me, it's like what we get from our teams. We have a couple of small teams that are able to sort of run ahead of the rest of the roadmap, I suppose I'd put it that way, and try things out maybe before we realize that it's something that works and we might want to put into production, and then we'll kind of throw back into the squad that's kind of working on releasing more regular features, as an example. But what's really hard with that is getting retailers to understand that part of that is also failing fast is really key. So if we've tried an experiment and it didn't work, not seeing that as a failure and we've wasted a month, but actually, you know, in the old world, we probably would have wasted 6 months on a project and then landed something that wouldn't have done what we thought it was going to do, either for the customer or for the business. So increasingly, I think retailers need to look at this as like an opportunity cost instead of an actual cost, which is, well, actually, we spent a month trying this thing, it didn't work, we're now going to pivot and do something else. That's a lot more valuable because you'll still end up getting to something that works sooner. And again, when you're using data sets, when you're using kind of hypotheses that you might have come up with your insights teams or your business teams, it's really important to be able to go and test those things out, because it also will inform what you do next with that thing that you've developed. So we've been, over the last 18 months, I'd say we've been doing a lot more of that. And it's been really helpful, whether it's through, you know, A/B testing techniques, or actually having squads that can go and test out brand new tech that we might not be sure there's a full use case for yet, but we introduce a use case to see if that can solve the problem. I think all of these things have really helped us kind of get there in a less risky way, I'd say.
There are a number of things I want to touch on that you just mentioned. You got me thinking. So, all right. So first thing, remember that the digital native brands experimentation is probably understood concept, but for more established brands with some legacy is an important pipeline to scale. So you remember we talked earlier about you got a much better innovation cycle now, right? And so therefore, as part of how you take those things to production and scale them out, experimentation and being able to pilot them, key. So I definitely agree with Fabrice on that front. I think that these are the things you probably need to think about, right? So do you have the framework? So things like budget cycles, for example, right? How easy is it for you to identify a backlog of innovations and then get the funding for it to scale it out? Can you dedicate resources to it, both like the technology resources, but also the people, right? Because if you don't, then a lot of those things are going to stay as backlog items. They're never going to go anywhere, right? So I just think, you know, it's okay for us to give us the tagline of experimentation, but I think there's important things that like brands beyond retail, to be fair, need to think about in terms of how they actually enable that experimentation. And final one, embracing failure in general. I think failure is implicit in experimentation. The thing you might put out, to Fabrice's point, it might not go anywhere, but it saves you though. It helps you to mitigate the risk. So I think it's an important thing to think about.
And you learn from it, right?
And you learn from it.
And you save maybe the 6 months that you have invested before.
Not only that, right? It's a good input for your business cases as well. It helps you inform the costs, right? You get a better idea, benefit, right? So it definitely helps. So it's no wasted work, right?
I like that, embrace failure. Okay, so we highlighted a few things in terms of businesses, brands, retailers, that they are turning to data, to AI and ML technologies to shape customer experiences in customer engagement, in loyalty, in retention, acquisition, personalization, and harnessing the power of data so brands, retailers can create more personalized offers, propositions, but also they have these insights, right? They understand better their customers. Dwayne, I would like to look into the future now. And I would like to understand a little bit how are advancements in technology, in data and AI/ML, and now, of course, we cannot skip, generative AI out of our discussion. How these advancements are shaping the customer experience in the retail sector.
Okay, so let's break it down. So let's do back office first, and then we do front office. So I think back office, you're seeing a number of productivity gains already, right? So you're getting a significant uplift in terms of the quality of content that you create for brands. I I think that initially there were questions around the scalability of that, and we're addressing those things. I think, then you got like the support teams, the people who handle and fulfill orders in the back office and, who handle contact center calls. They're getting much better insights on customers and how to help customers better. So that's fantastic. Back of office, great. Front of office, and this could be perceived as quite controversial, right? So what generative AI is captured our imagination, the imagination of investors. We're all in on it. I think that there's more that could be done, right? Let's put it this way: if we were to fast forward, if we had a time machine, we went 2-3 years out into the future and look back at now, we probably go, yeah, you're about right, man, right? I think that's largely because we've got established conventions. There's ways that users and customers engage with brands and they buy things, and it's all tablet based and it's visual, right? I think that until we find more ways to take generative aspects and embed them into those interfaces, I think it will, I think that's when you will see it unlocked and scale out.
So UI and AI.
That's right, UI and I like it. I like it. So then, let me give you an example, right? Mm-hmm. So if you think about the virtual try-on services that you've got, right? They're real mutual beneficial, features, right? In that, for customers, you get to see yourself in the outfit, right? And you get to buy it first time, right? A big barrier for many people adopting and buying things online is, might need to return it. So they buy 2 and 3 items when they really want one, right? And then on the retail side, for brands, for retailers, they get to reduce the amount of returns. So it's good for me and it's good for them. Right. So I think that's a good example of how you can embed it into something that already exists. The PDP, the product details page, looks the same. Nothing has really changed for the customer, but you've enhanced it with generative AI features.
Yeah, I would definitely, I'd agree with that. And I think just building on it, I think also to the point we were discussing earlier, customer experience is the kind of the end to end, right? That's how you've got to think about it. So actually sometimes those back office things are actually really crucial when you get to the actual thing the customer experiences. So I think until now, a lot of the use cases, and I think it's important to think about it that way, because I think, everyone's experiencing the hype right now of Gen AI. And, I'm sure in lots of businesses, people are tapping people on the shoulder going, hey, what are we doing with AI? What's our next AI project? And I think you've got to be careful. You've got to bring it back to is there a use case? Is there a genuine problem that we could solve with these technologies? And I think there are plenty, right? And at the moment, I agree with you. A lot of those feel more back office, like how do you augment? I don't know, a lot of retailers probably struggle with getting accurate data out of the thousands of suppliers they work with. There's probably tools out there that could help you augment that data set so that what you're presenting back to the customer is more consistent. There's clearly going to be use cases in call centers and things like that will make, will drive productivity gains. I think on the front end, it's a little harder because I think, again, retail for the large part is still a very human thing. It's about human connection in a store. So again, is it more about how Gen AI might help to augment and, help our workforce serve the customer better? I think there's going to be those kinds of use cases that we need to consider, not just the things we've seen today, which are I guess a lot of chatbots that might help you triage where a claim or a resolution goes, right? Is this something that the robot can solve, or is this something that needs to go to an actual human being to help with, right? So I think those things are actually happening. Now, I think what we will see is how over time we will find those use cases where it does make sense as that sort of front of office, as you call it. But this is where it's not one size fits all in retail. I think sometimes it can be. We'll need to recognize that there are different experiences, different journeys where this stuff will make sense. So maybe there'll be the high touch elements, which you'll still want to do in a store, that you'll still want to be served by a human. There might be things that actually take you away from, I like the UI AI thing. Maybe the UI becomes irrelevant in some use cases where actually, you can talk to a clever speaker or your mobile phone and ask questions, and you'll be kind of served the next kind of collection that you want to wear, or whatever that is, right? There'll be those kinds of use cases that I think as retailers, we just have to be ready for it not being one size fits all, and where do we use these technologies, and where do we continue to maybe think about the human connection more?
We talk about lots of stuff. We talk about use cases, start with that priority or the problem for your customers, right? You just mentioned prioritization. I think what you're talking is about prioritization. How data, AI, ML, the technologies can help solving and bringing you more insights and information that you can create these personalized experiences. So I would like to finish our chat with some advice to your peers from technology and business, in retail, but also in the other industries, because I think everybody can learn from this, that they are looking to embark on this data and AI-driven transformation to enable better customer experiences. So, Dwayne, some thoughts from your side. What would you advise people that are looking to embark on this journey?
Okay, so for me, two things come to mind. I think any mechanism that allows businesses to bring different groups of people together on a common vision for what's the right thing to do for customers, like a lot of stuff that you've done. I think that's a good thing ultimately, right? I think design thinking in general, obviously we got our working backwards that you mentioned. I think adopting and extending that through service design is even more important. It allows you to go deeper, right? Allows you to get into the nitty-gritty of how teams hand off between one another and their systems hand off between each other, which are important to really ingest change. You want to adopt these advanced technologies, you need to think about how you integrate it back into the business, right, and realize the benefit. And then the second one would be how you then link the CX to value. I think far too often we focus on the technology, right? So I really love the point that you raised earlier. Is like, because the technology is cool or because it's exciting, that's not the reason to move, right? So the reason to move is that you framed a hard benefit for the business and a hard benefit for customers, right? And you've created a blended package of work that allows you to then fix the basics and then deliver that benefit together as one thing. So I think that you need to be thinking in with that frame, in my view. Yeah.
I'd add a couple of things. I think for retailers, you've got to actually make sure you're getting the right data to begin with. None of these things are going to be meaningful unless you can trust the data that you've either collected or transformed on your customers. In our case, we definitely saw a lot of problems internally with some of the things we were doing and collecting. And I think before you can apply the algorithms and the machine learning and all of those things to that, you really want to be confident that you have that proper view of what your customers are up to and what they're doing, so that you trust that data. And I think it's just not being afraid to invest in getting that right to get kind of the next step right. I think the other point that we've already sort of touched on, but you've got to find those problems to solve. I think it's really important not to just use tech for the sake of using tech. And then the other is think about, this will also create pretty transformative things within your business. You're going to have to create new teams, bring in different skill sets that understand these topics, maybe from other industries, that will help you shape it within your retail business. And I think, again, don't underestimate kind of having to go into that and what a big change it might be eventually. But, start small, pick a couple of things where you can apply this. To that point, it doesn't have to be one size fits all, right? Find a couple of use cases, maybe spin up a small team, start experimenting. I think that's how you get through it.
I love this. So yeah, focus on your use cases, start small for the most important one, get your teams together, your small teams together. You don't need all the data, but you need good data to start iterating, testing, learning. If you fail, embrace it. Yeah. And then, link it to value, right? Link it to value. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much both. Really enjoyed today. And hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for watching.